This episode is brought to you by freedadcourse.com. You are always one conversation away from changing your life, and the power of hello is something that I subscribe to every single day, and I'm always saying hello to new people everywhere I go. Increasing your opportunity, increasing your connection, and getting access to the solutions to the problems that you are facing, whether you're on active duty or just beginning your veteran transition or even transitioning out for 20 years. On the other side of hello are the solutions that you're looking for. Again, head on over to freedadcourse.com. Get your 5-episode audio course to create more connection, create more friendships, and get back to living the life that you're trying to design.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home.
Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Fatherhood Friday. To get this week started, let's open up right with a good quality and, let's be honest, bad dad joke. So, when do astronauts eat lunch? Wait for it. Launch time. I know you're laughing, you're spilling your drink as you listen to this because it was so damn funny. But let me tell you, my kids have been repeating that joke for now almost a decade because my daughter's almost 10 years old, and it never gets old, and they always find it just as funny as I did the first time. And I actually learned from my daughter first, so it was one that she brought home from school. And I know these dad jokes are bad, but that's part of me lighting myself up, bringing some more humor, getting the stuffiness out of this room, and bringing more me and personality to the podcast. So if you're offended, I hope you are, because I think I finally have found a way to say things that do offend people. And I feel like I was always too worried about offending people before. Now I am me. And if you are offended by a dad joke, you probably shouldn't be listening to a dad podcast. So let's get this Fatherhood Friday started, because I know that this one is going to be important. And I know it's a theme we've talked about in little bits here and there. But I want to just anchor in this advice that has been coming up in a lot in the recent interviews that I've been doing, and was just reminded today of this critical advice of coming home. Now, this is the traditional sense of coming home from a deployment, when you've been gone and you've got to come home. And this is partially connected to those coming home videos where you see just the hangar full of tears and hugs, and you're just crying your eyes out watching these videos. This is the kind of moment that this episode is built for. Because if you've been in those moments, and I've never actually been one, so all my experience comes from interviewing over 120 dads now on how they've done it. And in this moment, here's my best answer, is they embrace everything that is about that honeymoon phase, because it is everything that you wanted, and it is that feeling that you've been looking for. But then the real work begins on the other side, because part of that coming home process is recognizing that, one, life happened while you were gone. I think that is something probably we know as military dads, but I think our own ignorance and our own bloated self-ego can get in the way that the universe wasn't still just rotating around us, and life did continue. Your wife had to hold down the fort. Your kids still had to go to school. They had to deal with real life problems, and your wife was still the one left back playing both roles of mom and dad. And you come back in, and there's kind of a default stereotype, I think, that goes with being a military dad, is that you jump back in trying to take control. Now, I don't think a lot of dads do this, but I think it is a stereotype that gets assigned to military dads because you're in control at work, you kind of go back home and you try to assume it. But I think I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to many military dads out there that we know that you can't just jump in and bark orders at your family and expect them to change. So what is the right mindset? The advice that was reshared today was from a 35-year Navy admiral who worked with the submarine fleet. And his advice resonated, and it validated what I had been saying in the podcast. So I felt like it was a calling to repeat that information today. And that information was understand what life was like while you were gone. I think this is the most fundamental component of coming home and creating a bond that can continue to grow versus try to figure out how you fit in. Because when you don't acknowledge that life happened while you were gone, it can be extremely difficult to figure out how to move forward, because it's almost like navigating through a landmine. And it's like, the best analogy that pops in my head is between Cuba and Guantanamo Bay, there's like 15 feet of landmines. It's one of the most heavily active minefields within the world, next to the DMZ. And it's kind of like navigating that, because you don't know where the landmines are. You don't know where something happened while you were gone, and you say something nonchalantly, and meanwhile that just fired up the furnace and someone gets red hot mad because you irritated something that's still healing for them because you weren't there. And then maybe that happens once, and then you're like, okay, so we're never going to do that again. So then you just kind of keep pulling back, trying not to rock the boat, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Meanwhile, you're not engaging with your family. You're feeling isolated. They're feeling isolated. They're not really feeling like you want to be there anymore because you're trying not to step on these landmines. But meanwhile, you're just trying to do your best and try to show up in whatever capacity. Meanwhile, you're fighting that thought, damn it, I can't do anything right. Everything I do just sucks. Then what do you do? And I think it's this moment, this pivotal pit, is where we can inflect and go in a dark corner and have some really bad thoughts. Or this is that moment that maybe, hopefully, we look for and ask better questions of the people that have walked this road. I think the ironic part of coming home is that military members have been doing it for over 200 years. It's not something new. There's been good and there's bad processes learned through all of that. There's people within your chain of command that probably do it beautifully. But as military dads, we don't admit that we might need help, that someone else might have better answers than I do. And in order for me to ask that question, I would have to, one, admit I have a family. Two, that I would have to admit I don't have the answers. And both of those things are really unfucking comfortable for a military dad. But going back to our scenario, what is the advice to cut through this bullshit, to cut through and get to the exact place that allows us to come together and move forward as a family? And I said it already, I'm going to go back to it. Getting to know each other and what life was like while you were gone. When you understand that if you have a teenage daughter or a son, there was probably boyfriends and girlfriends, issues on the playgrounds, there was grades, there was peer pressure, maybe there was puberty. Any of these questions could be things that your family was going through and you weren't there to help. Now, that's not against you, but the first part you have to do is acknowledge that existed. You have to let them say what they need to say and you hear what they need to hear. And that allows you to create empathy. And when you can create empathy, you create this powerful feeling that you see them and they see you. And that right there is what they're looking for. They want you to know that you're willing to catch up and that you weren't there when it did matter, but I'm here now. I repeat it often, be there for the small things so later in life to bring you the big things. If early in life you were there for the small things, they're probably already looking for you to be there again. And maybe they won't invite you because teenagers are teenagers, but the core memory of Dad was always there when I was younger and I'm just waiting for him to be there again. But it's up to you to create that moment and open that invitation to find out what life was like while you weren't there with your kids. Switch to your wife. In your wife's world, things were extremely heavy. There was probably things and feelings that because she had to survive and get through and push through the day because there was a family and kids counting on her to keep it all together, she probably didn't get a lot of time to feel a lot or even acknowledge the crappy, shitty feeling that she was having. And so through all of that, you need to understand what she was going through. Show gratitude for what she did while you were gone. Understand that she may need a break. Understanding and hearing her, to hear in her words, what does she truly need in this moment? Is it love? Is it time? Is it space? Is it room to just not hear kids yelling at each other in the car and going on an hour road trip and just having solitude with your own thoughts? As a stay-at-home dad, I can tell you that's probably high on her list because I value it like gold when I can go on a car ride for more than 10 minutes and just enjoy the silence of my own thoughts. Man, that's good feeling right there. And I probably would take a big bet that she is looking for that same feeling. So again, this whole idea, how do you build empathy? How do you connect? How do you deeply understand what life was like while they were gone? Because what I call this is an empathy bridge, that when you can build this bridge from two sides of a canyon that seems so wide you can't pass, but empathy is a strong freaking emotion. And when you can build a bridge out of that stuff and meet in the middle, you then can create a path to close that canyon and move forward together, where the empathy bridge really isn't needed because the land has come back together and you're now one cohesive family again. That piece of advice is something that I feel every military dad needs to hear in their heart. It needs to be passed down like a good recipe for family and life. And it's not. So if you're out there, you're hearing this message, make sure you pass this message on to someone that just came home. Because out of all the interviews that I've done, this piece of advice right here that I just laid down, this is the advice that every military dad needs to hear in order to ensure that the military does not destroy the roots of their marriage and create something that they can't come back from. And coming home is this process of emotionally understanding, what did you miss? How can you build empathy to understand? And how can you build something that can move forward together? This right here is what every military dad needs to hear. Guys, I hope you have an amazing weekend. Find some adventure. And I'll be back again with you on Monday for the longest podcast episode I've ever recorded, 1 hour and 40 minutes, with a doctor, a psychiatrist who focuses on PTSD, who lays it out with a no BS, full-on swearing mode. This is the most swearing we've ever had in the podcast as well. So it is an episode that I am excited to put out there and get you out there to hear this episode, because if you've had any connection with PTSD through a relative or yourself, this is the episode that you need to hear. So guys, have a great weekend. I will talk to you guys again on Monday.